Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica, and this is the video you've all been waiting for. That is because today we are doing the SuperStation One review from Retro Remake and Taki Udon. And obviously, being a MiSTer FPGA, you know what you're getting into on the actual FPGA core side of things. Just like on Analogue 3D or Analogue Pocket, it's kind of the exact same concept. So if you haven't seen a MiSTer FPGA video, I will try to explain it just a little bit, but I have an entire playlist explaining exactly what this is. And honestly, having tested this over the weekend and doing the unboxing, we're going to get really deep into the SuperStation One review here today. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But honestly, I've been waiting to review this thing ever since Taki Udon and Retro Remake announced it, and I love the fact that Retro Remake and Taki have basically brought everyone along for the ride when it comes to Twitter updates on the manufacturing, on everything else that is going on under the hood here. And the initial thing I will say is if this wasn't made by a multi-million-dollar company, you would have absolutely no idea, because the presentation of the actual product with the box quality makes it seem like a retail product from a company that's existed shipping consoles for like the last 15-20 years. This is definitely through that retail MiSTer FPGA and a console design that everyone has been asking for forever. So much so that it's going to come in with pack-in games as well. All different new games from new developers are going to be on this thing. So even if you don't put anything else on the machine, you're going to get a bunch of games right off the top. And they definitely range from demos to actually fully finished games, and even things that did get cartridge produced for the actual associated console like Demons of Astaborg. It is a really fun thing, but of course MiSTer is going to be what you put onto it, so it's definitely going to be a system that you kind of make your own. But as far as the actual product is concerned, before we get into its functionality, this thing absolutely for the price seems to be punching way above its weight. And I like all of the different slight nods to the PlayStation 1 font and graphical aesthetic that you would have seen on a PS1 back in the day as well. And you'll see here around the corner you get the console, you get a 64GB micro SD card, USB cable, and an HDMI cable, as well as printed materials, which we'll get into in just a moment. But do be aware, like basically every modern console made today, outside of actual stuff like PlayStation 5 and otherwise, you do need to bring your own charger as far as actually giving this thing power is concerned. And just so you know, it's going to be a 5V 2A minimum USB-C, or something with power delivery up to 12 volts will be totally fine. And trust me, I'm sure you have at least one of those in your drawers. I had about 13 to pick from, but it is one of those things because it is across regions, you do have to bring your own power supply. And as far as the designed object aesthetic, even on the box here, you'll see the SuperStation One, the word 1 underneath the flap in the PlayStation 1 logo colors. It is filled with these really small touches, and it's going to basically be a Russian nesting doll of boxes in here, because there's going to be a box that has a box inside of a box, and it's kind of fun just to see how often that happens. This is definitely feeling like an absolutely retail product, and that's exactly what it is. This is basically for the people that have been saying, I'd love to have a MiSTer FPGA, but I just want to have an elegant case with all the ports coming out of the back, at least the ones you would most commonly use. That way I can put it next to my TV and basically treat it like a console. If you've been waiting for that, this is exactly what is going to be happening when you open up the box. But you will see here on the unboxing, I totally duffed it and got that one upside down, because I do shoot these things the minute I open them up. I don't go through ahead of time and kind of figure out what to do before I turn the camera on. That way you get the most relevant unboxing experience as far as actually playing around with the SuperStation One when yours does arrive. But I will say, as far as the unboxing is concerned, straight up 10 out of 10. And as far as this running all of the cores a MiSTer FPGA would run, behaving like a MiSTer FPGA would behave, and just basically having the exact same experience as a MiSTer FPGA user would. Of course, it 100% nails that brief, because the SuperStation One is just a MiSTer FPGA at its heart, and it totally nails that goal. And I tested this thing thoroughly throughout the weekend, played Neo Geo, PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, N64, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, you name the core. If it is something that's popular, I checked it out, and it did exactly the same thing as a MiSTer FPGA would, because that is what, again, it is. It's just in a very stylized console design that you can put next to your television. 100% think to yourself, that is just a console that Sony made. And I will say, somebody at Retro Remake has an absolute fetish for actual cardboard manufacturing, because this thing is maybe one of the most complex put together cardboard boxes that I have done an unboxing on in recent memory. I know it's a very weird observation for a SuperStation One review, but this is why retro gaming is making a comeback. There's different manufacturers out there that put so much loving attention and care into actually making things. Though I will say underneath that you get 2 stickers, an HDMI cable, a USB cord, and one little printed piece of paper that kind of guides you how to use the machine, and it gives you a QR code to get to a website. So maybe the only quote-unquote letdown the entire time is the fact that underneath that piece of cardboard there really isn't all that much in the box, but everything you need is going to be there. And you will see here you get this cute little card with the QR code, even the Retro Remake logo in the middle, even cut out to actually emulate the design aesthetic of the actual SuperStation One. And on the back it just gives you a couple notes on adding BIOSes, because you're going to have to put your own BIOS files on yourself, but it gives you the basics of understanding that, and I am sure you'll be able to figure that yourself. And if you need a MiSTer FPGA setup guide, I do have them on the channel. Now, taking a look at the actual console in and of itself, I will say, and I do have a background in plastics and injection molding manufacturing for goggles and sunglasses when I worked at Burton, this thing is straight up one of the best feeling pieces of plastic I have taken out of a box and played as a video game console in a very long time. From the feel of the buttons to the plastic construction to its overall rigidity and thickness, this thing is just straight up feeling like something that would have cost $10, $15, $20 million to make. You'll see here you even get the Retro Remake logo on the front with all of the different colors, and it is slightly raised up so you can actually feel it has a texture to it, as does this plastic. You'll have to actually just forgive me, there is a little dust on this. I live in a house with 3 pets and a wife, and dust does happen. Now underneath the bottom, this is obviously the translucent blue case, and that is fun because I do have the controller to color match, and I will show you that in just a bit. But you get a lot of nice heat vents, and you also get the flap there for the dock, which will be coming in the future, and I will definitely review once that is available. But you'll see here on the bottom you get the dock connector, and that's also going to allow you to have a SNAC bypass to be able to use other controllers via SNAC or serial connection in the future. Because right now this is going to be working for PlayStation 1 controller and memory card SNAC until that dock actually comes out. But it's a well-fit connector, 10 out of 10 again on the fitment and finish. This thing just absolutely impresses me. Now while we continue the review, let's take a little pause here to have a notation about what is ready for the SuperStation One and what is still pending. Right now the dock, which is going to be available later on and is in manufacturing to be able to play PlayStation 1 discs, that is not yet out, so it isn't something that is going to be part of the review. I am sure this will get sent to me for review when it is ready so we can demonstrate that, so you're going to have to hold tight. And just so you are aware, Retro Remake did send me this console for review. There were no pre-existing conditions for me to say anything about it, and I think by now you trust me to say exactly what is going on, but I do want to make that notation clear that this console was sent for review. I did not open my wallet and pay for it, just so everyone is on the same page. And I will say it's going to be a lot of fun to review the dock once it is ready, because that is going to be a brand new party trick for MiSTer FPGA, bringing the SuperStation above what a standard MiSTer can do. But I am sure a lot of this manufacturing does take time, because trust me, in the manufacturing alone, all of the different components, all of the different plastics, that is highly complex work, but it will be fun to go ahead and review the dock, especially with that SNAC bypass to be able to use SNAC adapters outside of the PlayStation 1 controllers. And just so you know, if you're not familiar with MiSTer FPGA and how it works, SNAC is just basically a protocol to allow original controllers to communicate with the console on its own protocol, not a USB hub. But of course, we're going to have all the USB we would ever need here. And you'll see here in the renderings, you do see that SNAC bypass. And this, again, is something that's been very good. The basic attention to detail of sharing all of this information with potential customers. Secondarily, the UI is not quite ready yet. That is still in development, so right now you're going to be getting the exact MiSTer FPGA UI that you would have on any other console, but this will definitely be fun to do an update video on. As soon as that goes live, I will definitely go ahead and test it for everyone, talk about it, load it up with art, because that is something that is still in the works. Now, as far as I/O is concerned, this is something that basically everyone asked me to test, and I will say this thing emits absolutely nothing, and I would say the start of the show is the mini DIN connector in the middle, because that's going to support basically every actual analog signal you could possibly want. So if you have that for RGB, if you have a component S video, you're going to be perfectly fine. But you'll see USB power in, 2 more USB ports, obviously HDMI if you plan on never using this on a CRT or PVM, that's going to be your one connection. You have the mini DIN as well as the actual VGA connector, which is not just outputting VGA, will output stuff like VGA, RGB, as well as component depending on the cable you want. Ethernet jack and a headphone port as well, because audio is not carried over that VGA style connector, so you would have to hook that in separately for something like analog video and audio signals. And you'll see here on the front, you're going to get 2 memory card slots, 1 USB port, as well as 2 PlayStation 1 controller ports, and right in the middle is going to be that micro SD card. And just like every micro SD card, it's absolutely a challenge to get it out of the slot, but that really isn't a SuperStation 1 issue. That is just a thing with micro SD cards. They're one of the most challenging things in the world to use. I did have some questions on testing as far as the controller inputs are concerned. I plugged in 2 different PlayStation 1 controllers and I had input across both of them. I put memory cards across 2 different memory card slots and they were able to save as well. I was not able to actually get the menu of MiSTer FPGA working with the SNAC controllers because I believe that is something that is going to be working in the future as we get more actual updates on the end software side of things. So there's definitely still some bits in development, but you can just keep a USB controller right by you. And just so you know, whether you're using a D-pad or an analog controller, everything worked perfectly fine when it came to actually using PlayStation 1 controllers on the SuperStation 1. And that definitely is very impressive because it just basically works so long as you actually select the right controller under the SNAC protocol when you're actually in the menus for the PlayStation 1 core. And I will say, compared to an original PlayStation 1, I do not own the mini version of it or the one that came out basically later on in the life. Everything lines up perfectly. The ports are nice. You just get an extra USB port in the middle that you never had on PlayStation 1. But as far as the design language, this thing harkening back to the PlayStation 1 era, it absolutely is nailing it. And I will say, whoever did the color matching on the actual translucent blue here between a period accurate controller versus the new SuperStation 1, if there is any difference, it is almost impossible to tell to the human eye. I was very glad that I actually got this color because I had the controller to match. Now around one side of the console, you're going to see there is additional analog outputs, but these are not outputs you need to use. These are just available in case you want to use more standardized cables that you might just have sitting around. But I still recommend going into mini DIN or any of the other connectors on the back to just give it a cleaner look. But you're going to see we have composite, we have S-video, we actually have every single connector you could possibly want on the SuperStation 1. And the nice part is you get to pick and choose what it is you want. But I would say, as far as the manufacturing, even on these rubberized connectors that basically flop up and down, when you open them, it's a very easy open, and when you actually put them back into their enclosures, the fitment and finish here again is spectacular. 10 out of 10, and I know how difficult that can be. This is absolutely impressive. And people ask me to test. I tried S-video, I tried composite, I tried component, I tried RGB, all across my 20-inch Sony PVM. Every single signal worked, everything looked good, and everything is going to be available in 24-bit colors so long as the core actually supports it. Now you'll see around the other side we have composite as well as stereo out, so if you want to use those you can as well. But you might also notice that there is a dip switch package in there. Every once in a while, and this is a MiSTer FPGA thing, not a SuperStation 1 thing, you may have to move a dip to get the right video signal or other functionality out. Now on my end, I didn't really have to worry about anything whatsoever, but it is user accessible. You can open up this door, flip whatever dip switches you want, and then go ahead and close the door back down with no issues whatsoever. But again, I wouldn't play around with these unless you absolutely have to. You want to look up a MiSTer FPGA guide to explain what they do, or go to the guide on the SuperStation 1 website. I will leave that in the link below. But by default, I would just leave these things sitting here. Whether you're using any sort of HDMI signal, you're not going to have to touch it basically whatsoever. And as far as the actual buttons on the front are concerned, they are tactile, they are clicky, at least for the power, and of course the menu button here. It's not going to open a disk drive because there isn't one, but it works perfectly fine. And again, this thing from start to finish, I couldn't really find anything to point at to say I would have improved this or I would have changed that. Everything from the controller support to the memory card support to the overall design, case aesthetic, plastics quality, video signals out, just did everything I needed it to do. And it really is fun to be able to plug the original controllers directly into the front of the console like you would a PlayStation 1. And I will say, one of the things that I really wanted to check that nobody asked but I care about is the fitment of the controller port into the actual SuperStation 1. It was nice, it fit well, it was tight, would never come loose, but it also wasn't so tight that it is a chore to get this thing unplugged. So as far as how these things fit is concerned, again, no notes whatsoever. And just so you get a close-up here, you see, just like a real PlayStation 1 console, you have to wiggle them back and forth to be able to put them in or out, but it isn't too tight, it isn't too loose. It's basically like the Goldilocks, it is right in the middle. And as far as the packing games are concerned, it is a nice touch to kind of drive home the fact that this is a retail product in a retail shell that really feels like something Sony could have made back in the mid to late 90s. SuperStation One is going to be what you make of it, the same way MiSTer FPGA is going to be what you make of it, and that is because SuperStation One is a MiSTer FPGA. So you can ask me down below in the comments, did X-Core work? And I can tell you it works exactly the same way that MiSTer would, because that's what it's doing. I've had no issues running any of the games, and if you want to see further testing of this, or there's some really weird edge case that you would like to know about, you can leave me a comment down below and request it. I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to get to it, but I would be curious to hear if I forgot to do anything in your eyes as far as this review is concerned. And again, it's one of those things. MiSTer FPGA has been out for a while now, so when it comes to actually reviewing MiSTer FPGA hardware, it is much more in a design aesthetic and how it affects the end user than it is what the cores do, because of course we have those. And you'll see here you get a fun SuperStation One wallpaper. Of course you can change that, and as far as all the cores are concerned, outside of cores in active development like Sega Saturn, of course these are all going to be up to date. And just a note on the actual Sega Saturn core, this is still going to be a single 128 megabyte RAM module, so those few games that run ever so slightly slower on Sega Saturn on single RAM are going to run the exact same here. And as far as all of the utilities, all of the different scripts are concerned, everything you need to go ahead and kind of interact with your MiSTer FPGA in more of a settings-based menu is going to be here, including Zapper support if you want to use any of the actual cards to be able to tap and load them up. But again, if this is your first MiSTer FPGA, definitely read the guide to understand what all of the different changes do. That way you're making sure you go ahead and play around with the right settings and don't change anything. Although one thing I would definitely recommend running is some of the arcade organizers, so you can get the folders for different manufacturers in different years. That way you're going to be able to actually play them, because you are going to want to run update all to be able to bring down all of the different games that would be associated with MiSTer. But as far as SuperStation One is concerned, I legit cannot point to any single thing whatsoever to say I would have done it differently. I wish it was a little bit better. And this is the MiSTer FPGA everyone has been waiting for when they say, I just want a MiSTer in a clean console design where all the cables come out of the back. And don't get me wrong, there's tons of different MiSTer FPGAs on the market, and all of them are incredible, but I think this is definitely going to fill a need for a lot of people out there. I will have a second review when the dock and the UI come out, and if you want to see a follow-up to this, leave me some questions down below, and if there's enough interesting ones, you might see another video. But this is definitely a 10 out of 10, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.